world of web source, open source with the Web3. Welcome, Navneesh. I'm Navneesh, and we are going to talk about revolutionizing the world of open source with Web3. So, my first question, particularly, I would like to tell you what I do first. So, I am a developer turned community builder. So, I build communities for developer products. So, I am into community-led product growth side. So, I'm having a bit sore throat. So, please don't mind of my voice. I think most of us are having a bit sore throat because we all are partying hard and we are in Goa. So, चलिए शुरू करते हैं. So, guys, raise your hands if you are a developer or if you have ever contributed to open source. So, okay, I see a few hands here. That's great. So, like, do you love contributing to open source? Like, how many of you actually contribute to some renowned open source project? Okay, again a few hands. That's great. Okay, so you have raised your hands. That's great. So now let's come to the point. Do you think if we tokenize the open source thing, like if we tokenize the contribution model of open source, then you will make more contributions to the open source? What do you guys think? Matlab, you are regular open source contributors and you are getting nothing, right? But let's say if we start giving you tokens to contribute to open source, or if we start giving you money to contribute to open source, what do you guys think? Like, do you think there will be an increase in contributions in open source? Yes. So we are talking about the same. So what the idea is to create a smart contract that will incentivize every verified open source contribution. So let's say I am having an open source project and you create an issue there. So I'll check the issue out, I'll approve the issue, and if I'll get that issue approved or verified, your contribution will be rewarded. If you will raise a PR, it gets merged, your contribution will be rewarded. So that is the whole idea. So the tokenization of Web3 may provide a whole new model for open source contribution. The correlation between the same exists, but it is yet to fully explore. So, can you please have a look at this picture in detail? So, have a look at it and we'll discuss about it in another like 10-15 minutes. So, just have a look at it. I'll pause for a minute. So, from like this chart, I have tried to simplify the Web3 and open source model that is in my mind. So I hope everyone has had a look at this and have grasped, try to grasp that what you can understand from this picture. That is what I want. Okay. So Web3 can solve a series of problems, like multiple series of problems like data monopoly, etc., permanent storage, many things. But like if we fundamentally think more about it in terms of open source, it can like give much more to the open source community. So firstly, we need to understand open source first. Like what is open source? How it works and why open source? Like why should you contribute to open source? So these are the initial stages of open source. Like the initial practice of open source started in 1960s when like OSI coined a term called open source. And like OSI defined open source with a 10 core criteria. So any code that is available to the public like freely is particularly like not open source. There are many more criteria as well. You can check out the OSI website and you can check out regarding what is particularly like a criteria for a project to be purely open source. So like the thing that I need to tell you is we need to understand that having source code hosted on GitHub on a public repository is like not an open source project purely, and it is not literally an like active open source project. So you have to make your project active. So talking about the impact of open source. So in a Forrester report, what we have found is 96% of companies are feeling that open source is very important to their business missions and to go complete and achieve their goals. 98% of companies are planning to increase or maintain their strategy to open source in next year, and 96.3 companies are in like the top 1 million web servers of different organizations are running on Linux, which is an open source product itself. Okay, so why do I want to make open source better? So like if I talk about independent open source developers, they are paid very little as compared to the money that like SDs get or like developers at multiple organizations are getting. So the idea is to generalize that thing. Let's say you can be a full-time open source guy, you can contribute in open source in multiple places and you can earn something out of it. So like many organizations are not paying a penny to their open source contributions as well, contributors as well. So particularly the software industry has a GDP of around 500 plus billion, but like open source contribution, like open source contributors are paid very less. So this is a very funny cartoon. So if you are able to see it clearly, so here is a thing. So here is the whole infrastructure. Here are the people who are working in the company, but the one who is like having all the back of this product is some random person who is maintaining that project since ages. So open source comes with a great value, but it struggles to maintain its own light and heat in many critical projects due to its nature as public good. So like what I want to like convince to you guys is, or what I want to tell you guys is, कि open source is doing great, but it can like achieve much better if we can like incentivize all the open source contributions. So it will get you a increased rate in the contribution rate as well, and there are many more benefits which are there in the next slides. So let's come here. So like here is how like you can get this thing done. So you can fund open source projects directly through like a smart contract rather than through software foundations. So there are many software foundations who are funding open source projects. So it's not needed at all. There will be a smart contract through which we will be doing all this stuff. You can influence, like you can, sorry, yes, you can like get feature requests driven by the user needs. You can incentivize on-time pull request merges. Let's say you gave, you committed a pull request. You made a pull request and then it gets merged. It can get incentivized. You can have bounties for the bug hunts. You have better test coverage and incentives. Like if someone make updates to your documentation, that can be incentivized as well. So like every open source contribution that is coming, that someone is making, everything can be incentivized. That is the whole goal of this idea. So let's look at this picture again. So talking about Facebook, Ethereum, Linux, Wikipedia, these like Facebook has some open source initiatives like PyTorch and React, and like they are having a hefty number of contributions on those repositories. So there are many people who contribute to React here as well. And let's say ki all those contributions are incentivized, it will give a rise in the contributor rate of those projects as well. Let's say small projects who have raised some amount of funding start incentivizing their open source contribution, so they can bootstrap their product development, they can like develop their product with a community if they can incentivize their open source contribution. So that is the whole idea, that is the whole agenda behind incentivizing open source contributions. So we want to make a open source community a place where there are numerous number of financial opportunities for the developers out there. So everyone is like many developers are contributing to open source, but like a vision and a contribution cannot run your like home. You want money to run your home, and that is why this talk is happening. That is why I want to make sure that we can create something to incentivize the open source contributions out there. So okay, so the thing is the economic infrastructure could have the open. I'm talking about the open source economic structure and infrastructure. So we can have a set of transparent rules, like we discussed earlier. A PR can incentivize like this, and everything can be have like decided beforehand. So let's say we can have levels and contributions. So like level 1 contribution, level 2 contribution, level 3 contribution. So that is the way that I am thinking of implementing it, and I think like it can create wonders for like small businesses, small Web3 startups that are like building, and that are building in a community focused environment. So the surface area of opportunity will increase exponentially as the tools are compound on each other, and as they get those all contributions incentivized. So that is all from my side till now. So if you have any questions, do let me know. That's right. Okay, thank you so much. And the future is open and decentralized and incentivized.